As part, maybe just a quick intro to how we actually started working with Max.gov is for the SEPS project, we were saying, okay, how can we take what the California Community Colleges has and use web services and share data both in the government and also with consultants. That's always a challenge. How do you share information across from government to the outside? And we also needed a place to kind of, a common place to kind of log in with security access and a lot of other things. So we saw what Max.gov is doing, and you might look at this when you first think, oh, just another government IT system. Well, this is very different. This is very unique in what's going on and very innovative, very advanced, very much in line with everything that we've been talking about. And the most interesting thing is our project for SEPS and with VA and DoD was to create a strategic plan of what are you going to do the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. And before we even finished the strategic plan, we had put the recommendation about Max.gov, and it was already starting to be implemented before we completed the final report. There was so much ROI potential that was seen that by moving to Max.gov, why did we do that? I guess that's the main question. Maybe you can kind of go over some of the ideas of that.
Thank you, Kimon. Listening to you, I really don't have much to say. Usually I give talks. I'm talking to budget people. You guys aren't budget people. And in fact, right down the street, there's the American Association of Budget Analysts meeting, which I should be at myself, but I'm here. And we give a talk that we give, and when we give that talk, people usually glaze over. But Kimon got it, and I didn't know whether this was, oh, he just was trying to, get business or something like that. But now listening to him speak, I realized that I really have nothing I need to say. He said it all. Agile, and some of the words he used, I took some notes, and the person you had up from California, agile, lean, resource center, resource constrained, web services, open standards, all sorts of, these are great things to have. And the world really has changed, and there's really everything I'm going to show is all there. So what I'm really proud about is that as you said, I love that analogy, by the way, of the Twitter and the earthquake. We are happy to know that we are ahead of what you were describing. And I'm thrilled with that, and I would give all the credit to our architect, Shahid Shah, who is unfortunately not here. I thought he was going to be here, but he's not. So the question for you, is why Max.gov, why OMB, why budget systems, what am I doing here? And the simple answer, the short story, and some of you I think were at the summer conference, the last one where I met you at, so you may have heard some of this, but the simple answer is that about 7 years ago, budget officers, who are the most tightwad people, if you think about, $100 billion agency budgets, the budget office is the one that's saying no, 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 no all the time and trying to fit things in, sequester these types of things. So about 7 years ago, the Budget Officers Advisory Council got together. This was all part of e-government. Hopefully you've all heard of e-government. You mentioned the digital strategy. And e-government is about the idea of not doing monolithic systems. In fact, I'm going to come up with a new sign, one of these stop signs, right? It's going to say stop monolithic systems. The days of monolithic systems are dinosaur days. They're the days long past. The idea that you need something done and you hire a systems analyst and they spec out the system and then they build that system from scratch is long gone. Actually, it's been long gone for decades, but I believe in open source whenever possible, because that's when you can make that transition that Kimon was talking about, from doing application to doing information and serving business needs. That's what ultimately matters, right? What matters is getting the job done, helping people, doing things that are important. And systems can help that. But systems, if you can get them cheaper and freer and be more agile and not get locked into a proprietary structure and do it in a component based, so that, okay, today this is the best component, but tomorrow there's a better one and you switch. It makes your life miserable if you're in the proprietary world, but it makes your life wonderful if you're outside. And I love the digital strategy. That's I should incorporate that slide as well. Because the idea that you do these layers and you no longer have to worry about certain things, you're just worrying on that information layer, or you're worrying about the data layer, the presentation layer. It's a great insight, which has been going on for probably 20 or 30 years. It's been building to where we are today. We're there now. The beauty is if you're passionate about architecture or buildings, you can stop worrying about bits and bytes and programming in assembly language and programming in other kinds of procedural languages and move into a world, if you're more visual, of taking components and plugging them and playing them. Okay, it's a wonderful world and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. In any event, about 7 years ago, the budget people got together and they said, are there things we could do together that would make budgeting more effective? And when they did that, they came up with the ones, though hopefully all of you can see the slides, the 10 things that are on the slide deck. And the bottom 5, none of you are probably interested in. They're having to do with federal budgeting. It's a very narrow discipline, right? As I say, they're down the street meeting with about 300 people, and that's about all, working on federal budgeting. Actually, there's a few thousand to be fair. And budget execution, financial management, these are all good things, but none of you are interested in them. However, the interesting thing is that there were 5 other things that federal budget people needed to be effective. And those things, it turns out, are the obvious things that every professional needs, right? Analytical tools, collaboration, data collection and tracking, document production, knowledge management, right? These are things that are all buzzwords today that we all need. They're buzzwords for good reason, because they really are applicable. And so the first thing we did, being a part of an eGov initiative, was who else is doing this? Can we adopt it? Can we provide it? I mean, can we adopt it? Can we use something else? And we looked around, and in the federal government, nobody was doing these things in an interagency way. That's a key point. And many agencies were doing these things for themselves, and many vendors were selling it to agencies, but nobody was doing it in an interagency way. And that's where we work, right? The Office of Management and Budget, we put together the president's budget. That budget is a composite of all the agency budgets. You know, there's about 150 agencies, large and small, plus components. That component budget could not be put together if all we had was within our agency firewall. We drew a big line and said, okay, and actually we used to do this, right? Bring us your floppy disks, bring us your pieces of paper, your stacks of paper, and it would all be done by hand, what we called sneakernet back then, right? Nowadays, so for the last 25 years, we have been in the forefront of using the internet in order to compile this data to put together roughly 1 million data items every single year for the president's budget. Because of that need, right, necessity is the mother of invention. Because of that need, we have evolved interagency tools that transcend what most agency IT shops do. And I work with ITs, and they're great people, and they have a lot of responsibility, but their first reaction is, I'm going to build my firewall, and I'm going to let email in and out, but actually they resisted that for decades, and I'm going to let the internet in and a little bit out, and some agencies allow social media, some others don't. My agency blocks it all right? But all of that stuff is based on this idea of a firewall, a fortress that's protecting it, and they can be simple about that and say nothing else comes in and out. If I did that, our business would fail. And one of the beautiful, how many of you know about FISMA, the Federal Information Security Management Act? FISMA is a beautiful act because it had one key point, or at least NIST's interpretation of it. And what it said was that the business owner is the final authority. Not the IT security people, not the CIO, although in many cases the agencies give it to the CIO. FISMA says it's the business owner. And ultimately, it's the bottom line. Right? And I love that principle because if you put the business owner in charge, then when the IT person says, draw this firewall around it and don't let anything get out, and the business owner says, I can't get my job done, who's supposed to win there? What's more important, a security incident or getting your job done? Which is more of a threat to your business, a security incident or not being able to get your job done in the first place? And it's that key insight that drives everything that we're doing. So I only have a few more minutes, so I'm going to rush through some. I want to give you kind of you guys are all architects, so right brain, I assume, is stronger with you in visual. So I'm going to go faster here just to give you an overview. First, this next slide shows that we started with interagency, which I've just been talking about, but we knew about that we needed to have robust, granular controls. Open government is great, but open government is not free-for-all government, and so we have built granular controls that allow you to control access at any level, and it's up to you to do that, not us, okay? It's not central control, it's delegated control. The second thing is once you do that, you can now do intra-agency, right? Because Interagency, intra-agency is just one agency within that. So once you can control that. Then we added state, local, and international and non-governmental partners, which is why I'm here. Because half or three-quarters of you listening to the introductions are actually partners in government. You're not government per se, all right? And finally, we can deal with the public, but what I'm really focused on here is that top level of the secure collaborations, government to government and government to partners, okay? Now, Kimon mentioned this in his slide, so I don't know if you took it from me or was just resonating, but I love it. All right, the service-oriented architecture, this is the greatest buzzword of all, right, for about, in the Bush administration, that this was one of the president's management initiatives, and nobody had a clue what it meant. Nobody knew what to do with it, but in fact, it is a huge insight. It's what says, don't build monolithic systems from the ground up that are based upon proprietary. It says build component systems that are modular where you can plug and play using APIs and other various types of ways to communicate and share layered data, and that way you're not building things over all the time. It also says shared services. And what a shared service is, and we all use shared services, but the point is that it turns out that there are some technologies you can take an analogy and drive it all the way through. Well, shared services is one of those where you can just keep driving it and you keep getting benefit even as you dig in deeper. And so, for example, you'll see on the slide deck here, these are just 7 of the shared services we run. Authentication, common database, web framework, workflow tools, business intelligence, publishing, records management, and there's dozens of others. The key insight here is that if you come to me and say, I need a SEP system, any systems analyst will say, okay, good, well, you need some web provisioning, you need a database, you need all of these things plus the other hundreds I mentioned. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to say, and now I'm going to write them for you, and then I'm going to either pull things out of my pocket or I'm going to write them for you, and it's going to take many, many months. It's going to have high uncertainty. You're not going to have good products until the end, and when by the time you get to the end, which could be months and months and months and months and months, it will probably be out of date from what the requirements were. Plus, most of us know we don't know what the requirements are until we touch it, right? So having a thought experiment of, oh, I needed this is probably disconnected with when I really see it. Through the shared services, service-oriented architecture approach, you completely change that around. Today, in about an hour, we could set up a system that did huge amounts of functionality. And you could kick it and play with it and work with it. Now, it's not a full-grown system, but nevertheless, the requirements problem is solved through that. In fact, though, it could be a full-grown system. We do systems in an hour. We do major data collections in an hour because we have converted many of these functions that people need to do into services and piece those services together. What we find is that 90% or 80%, this is not a quantitative statement, of a system is already done. And yes, there's 5, 10, 15, 20% that is truly custom and unique. And yes, you can work on that and build that, and that requires there's still work for programmers to do that. But in addition, if you then write that as a service, there's somebody else who's going to want it as well. And because of this, we're kind of like in the Johnny Appleseed world now of we build something for somebody, but we spend that a little bit of extra time to make sure when we build it, it's also more generalized, and we find somebody else who comes and says, wow, I want to use that too. And there are many, many examples I could go through. Another thing that's part of our creed is that we have a broad technology stack. There's no one technology that we're into. I said open source, and I love open source, but we're not only open source. We have open source, we have commercial open source, and we have commercial proprietary in our technology stack. We'll use whatever is practical, whatever is cost efficient, whatever meets the job. That's the bottom line. But if there's something better that meets the job better, we will swap out in the time it takes to snap your hands. If it's cheaper, if it's more functional, we're going to swap out because we can do that because we don't have this 20-year-old huge monolithic system that we've got to drag along with us whenever we do that kind of change. We just swap out the one piece, put in the new one, and the thing functions better. It's kind of cool. Okay, Max Authentication Services is one of the things that Kimon mentioned, and it's a web service, which was mentioned on the slide by the person from California. The point about Max Authentication Service is that any application, federal, open source, commercial, can be plugged in. And this isn't unique actually to us. We're using the standard technology today for web authentication. But the point is we have adopted that standard, we have implemented that standard. And so today, with very little amount of effort, a couple of days of programming, you can adopt, and then there's at least a couple of dozen systems that have done it, that have adopted the Max login so that federal people can log into their system securely with their identity. All it requires is a federal partner, right? Because we're not doing it for private benefit. We're not making it a sales thing, right? It's not something we're letting you do for your own benefit, for commercials to do their own benefit. We need a government partner who says, I'm using this system. I have an arrangement with this system. I want government people going in here. They have met the government requirements for records management and FISMA. So they're a partner. That's the key word, remember, partner. And I don't want people to have a new login. And as a result of that, we have 85,000 people who can now log into 25 or 30, I've lost count of the number of sites, that have nothing to do with Max.gov, except that they're using this ID. In addition, we've implemented and by the way, when they do that, they immediately get the federal requirements for PIV, HSPD 12. Most of you don't know about that, except the government people. We have these little cards. There was this great vision 7 years ago. We're all supposed to be using these cards to log in. Most people now have the cards, about 75%. Most people don't use the cards because they haven't been implemented in their system. They use it to get in the building. It's a huge problem in the government from an e-gov perspective. We have implemented that. So if you implemented Max Authentication to your private system, that partner system, you can immediately have people logging in with PIV cards and get the benefit of the extra authentication this has. This is a high level. It's called two-factor authentication. Plus, we've implemented, if you have good eyesight, you see at the bottom what we call federated partner logins. And these are agencies that have partnered with us, very little money, took very little time, and as a result, they don't actually log into Max at all. Now there's 5 agencies, there's another 3 that are coming on. The beauty is, as I say, these people log into their network through their own login, and they click on a link and go right into Max, as if they were on their network. And we have hooked this up into even Microsoft SharePoint. So if you have a SharePoint, and I'm not a big fan of SharePoint because I think it's a great product now. It used to be a terrible product, but it's much too expensive. I don't know why people buy it. But if you have got SharePoint implemented, you can actually, and you want to have that exposed to other people, and your licensing allows it. That's the kind of hitch that Microsoft adds. If your licensing allows that, you could have other people from throughout government logging into your SharePoint and sharing your documents without them logging in to your network. And that's a huge thing, by the way, for CIOs, because CIOs do not want people logging into their network. Remember, we talked about that. So now they can, so a lot of people, and this is, I think, a lot of where Russ and the SEPS program have bought into us, because we're not logging into the DoD network. We're not having people log into the VA network. They're logging into Max, which is designed for it, and they're getting into this one application. It's a wonderful model. So I think I've used up most of my time, so I'm just going to spend one more minute if I can. This is now that true right brain. The Max Federal Community, 87,000 users. The cost of this is tiny, minuscule. We have over 2 million documents now in here. It's a huge knowledge sharing, all sorts of functionality. These slides are all at Max.gov. So if you're saying, why is it going so fast, just go to Max.gov and you can see the slides. And it doesn't require a login. Actually, it's open. Groups, dynamic groups, calendar. We have a calendar system. Now, this is not intended to replace your calendar system, but our calendar system is for group calendaring. It's the same principle. You can do this, if you're doing cross-agency calendaring or calendar partner private calendaring, you can do that here. In addition, you can do syncing of calendaring. So for example, my calendar is synced to my Max calendar, and now any of these Max users that I allow to can now see my calendar, the free busy, and they can set up meetings. So whenever I want to do a meeting, I say, here's my calendar, go find a good time. And I can line up 10 people, and of course that's impossible, but I can still do it, and you can see that if you have good eyesight. You can see that on the right here. I've lined up some calendars, and you can see little slivers of space. My name is the yellow one there. Not too much time there. Okay, you can add attachments, and by the way, we keep every version. SharePoint does this as well. So if let's say you messed up that Word document, or you messed up that spreadsheet, and you're tearing your hair out, and you call your IT person, and they say, "I'm saying this just happened to me, by the way, and I'm sorry, we have 1,000,000 documents. It'll take us a month to find it, and we're not even going to bother because we can't do it." If I had been doing that document on Max, on the community, every version's there. I would have gone click, click, opened it up, and then restored it or saved it as another document. All of that is at my fingertips. It completely solves that problem. We allow diagramming, and these diagrammings, and this is again for the right brain, those for people with right brains, you can pictorially diagram out what you're trying to navigate. These can all be links. So now you can have people map through whatever your site is or whatever you're trying to get people to do. We support multi-stage workflow. We support document assemble and document compare. And here I'll give a shout out to Microsoft. We actually are using the Microsoft Document Server system behind it as a server, and we're sending it documents, and it's sending back these compiled documents. And it's a wonderful business model because we're not being charged by user, right? That's part of it. It's a server-based thing. And so it's a good value, and we always use things that are good values. You can do this. We do RSVPs for events. We do this all the time. People set them up, waiting lists. And one of the beauties of Max now, and this is what I love to talk about, is if I can convince you to have government people to have a Max ID for whatever the reason is, I don't care whether it's buildings or health or budget or finance or IT, whatever, you're now in the directory, and I can find you instantly. So without any cost at all, I can look up. If you guys want to look me up, the government people here, or the partners here, if you want to look me up, just go to Max, go to the directory, go find users, type in A and S and OMB in the email, and you'll find me. You don't have to remember how to spell my name. You don't have to remember whether it's Andy or Andrew. Okay, all of that stuff is gone. It's an incredible functionality, and it's free. Meaning it didn't cost me money finding these people. They all logged into Max for some benefit. I love it. We've implemented an extremely powerful search, probably the most powerful search I've ever seen. And again, I don't want to compare myself to Google and Bing and all those. They're different. For those, you go there to find a subject, you get 1,000,000 things back. The top 10 are well attuned, and you're probably happy. In the government, you're almost always looking for a single specific document or a single specific page. You're not looking for, I want information on budgeting. You're looking for, what was that guidance that was sent out last week, or that document that Kimon edited as part of the SEPS project? What was it? And that's what we have implemented here, a highly faceted, structured search that you can find anything. It's quite amazing. I'm really proud of it. We do discussion forums, but then this whole other tool, which again, I'm just running through Max Collect, we've done over 250 applications now. And we can do another one in an hour. Okay, this is a data collection generator that is transforming government. The old way you actually do email, you send out a spreadsheet, you send out a Word document, you get it back, you manually compile it. The new way, 200, actually it's getting closer to 300, you set up a Max Collect exercise, people log in and they enter their data. The data gets automatically compiled using either an analytics processor or a publication processor, and we do major publications this way, such as the OMB's budget briefing book, the Aid to State and Local Governments chapter, the President's Budget, you can look that one up. The Cuts, Consolidation, Savings chapter, the President's Budget, you can look that up. Those are all public documents, and a whole bunch of other things that we're doing now. All sorts of information, workflow, paginated table of contents. I'm just showing you some of the things. Here's a structure. Here's that president. Here's the table. This is the kind of structured table. This is camera-ready stuff coming right out of the system, push of a button, easy to do. And you can do faceted searches. And these are, I don't have time to go over what those are now, but think of it as a shopping search, right? If you're looking for information, this is the best possible way. We all do it every day. You put in a little search, and then you get a whole bunch of facets about what that is. Max Analytics is another tool. Again, here you can go to Oracle, you can get Hyperion, you can go to MicroStrategies. You can spend $500,000 to $1 million for just a few thousand people or a few hundred people to have analytics. Or you can use Max because we're based upon open source, commercial open source. So we bought server licenses that we can provide for 100 people, 1,000,000 people. It doesn't matter. The license is the same. I love those kind of licenses. You should all get those kind of licenses. We're thrilled to give the company that supports that the money. They're doing good value. And we provide it to all government. That's the kind of Johnny Appleseed. And then this knowledge management, this is a key principle. Up till now, knowledge management is always a special event. You hire somebody, you pay them a fair amount of money, they come in, they build a knowledge management system, and then that system is invariably out of date within months. It is hard, you are hard pressed to find a successful knowledge management 6 months, a year later. Intranets, how many intranets are up to date today? How many times do you go to the internet and find something useful? The answer is that you don't. And the reason is because the knowledge management is only effective when it's built upon the actual content maintenance itself, right? Simple example, if I'm maintaining my distribution list on a spreadsheet and I have to send that spreadsheet to our IT person, web person who posts it on the internet, is it going to be real or is it going to be out of date? It's going to be out of date. Who knows? I'm going to get tired of it. I'm going to stop. They're going to have a hiring freeze. There's going to be nobody to send it to, right? On the other hand, if I'm maintaining it in a tool, in a dynamic information tool like the community, like the Maxfield community, or in my data collection system like Max.gov, which didn't cost me anything to set up, so I've got that there, and then that allows me to access the data and search the data. Now I've dual used it. That's Web 2.0. Web 2.0 is about dual use of information, multiple use, and that's knowledge management, right? If everything you're doing is done in a way, whether it's one system or multiple, where all the data is available, that's the data layer Kimon was talking about, now you have knowledge. Everything you do, Kimon's project is there. I don't have to go searching for, I have to go searching for it, but I know I can get it. I don't have to go digging into his files. He didn't have to do something special. All he did was open up a Word document maybe, or PowerPoint, worked on it in a platform that's shareable, a non-proprietary platform that follows standards, right? All he had to do was make that one change, and knowledge management happened automatically. And then you have what are called gardeners, right? People who are passionate that come in and they move, they rearrange the lifeboat. They move things around and make it easier. But they actually haven't changed it. They haven't done, they've done value added. They haven't done ground up. So that's hopefully what you wanted me to talk about, Kimon.
Great. That's a very good overview. Sorry, it was kind of short. We'll have discussions.
I'd just like to know what it costs other agencies to have access to your system.
Let me repeat that. The question was, how much does it cost other agencies to put into Max.gov, Andy?
We need to talk. We have set up a, if you haven't guessed already, I'm kind of a strange person coming from the 60s, which gives you my age for those of you on the phone. And so cooperatives were a big thing for me, right? And communes also, but we'll just talk about cooperatives here. Okay. And the idea of a cooperative is that a couple of people got together and do something, and they do something because they love doing it, and they all chip in, right? And there's some costs, and some people chip in work, and some people chip in money, and the thing starts to grow. And then other people come in, and they use it, and after a while, they say, this is really good. I should give something to it. And they contribute. So our model, we don't have an appropriation for what we do. It starts with the budget line of business people. Most agencies, not all, but VA as a member, have contributed to the budget line of business and the setting up of these tools. And then what we found is that we are so much cheaper, 30% to 50% cheaper on average for doing major projects, that we simply say to an agency, look, if you're doing a project and you're about to spend money, consider doing it with Max. Because what we do then is make it available to all. That's we're kind of, as they say, kind of like a Robin Hood. If you ask us to build something, and this happens often, we build it and then we make it available to everybody. And so far, this kind of crazy 60s model has worked. We're growing, we're providing more features, our users have grown to 85,000. So the short answer, that was the long answer, okay? The short answer is any federal user can go to Max.gov, log in, and with their federal email address, they can get an ID and use it, period. All we ask is that when you're getting a lot of value and you're starting to use it for things that you would have spent money on otherwise, please consider at some point giving back, contributing, becoming members, and helping this thing grow. And that way, maybe we can get to our vision, our crazy vision, which is, serving everybody, having a Max ID, anybody I want finding it. Does that help?
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I think that a lot of these services that are provided are exponentially less cost. Like, for example, the secure login. You can build a secure login, 1,000 times for different systems, but if you guys already have it, it's a shared service that can be cut across all the agencies. And that's, by itself, the development of a secure login is a big deal. But since you built it, then you're sharing it out. And that's kind of the theme throughout a lot of this development is why build it over and over and over again? Just build it once and start sharing it.